along the way, but this is The Principles of Communism by Frederick Engels from 1847. This is a classic text. This is on Marxist.org. Yeah. So, yeah, here we go. As always, feel free to ask questions along the way. This is my first time reading this. I am not a political philosopher. I am also not endorsing this text. I am reading it to evaluate it. So, yeah. And here we go. So, 1. What is communism? Communism is the doctrine of the conditions of the liberation of the proletariat. Okay, so we're talking about conditions and the liberation of the proletariat. Liberation is like, okay, so something is under wraps or in trouble, and the proletariat, I mean, you probably know what this means, but like, this is like the working folks, but like, yeah, so the working folks are under control and they have to be liberated, and this is talking about the conditions under which the working folks will be liberated, hopefully from work. I'd like to not work. What is the proletariat? The proletariat is the class in society. So now we've got societies separated into classes, which lives entirely from the sale of its labor and does not draw profit from any kind of capital, whose weal and woe, whose life and death, whose sole existence depends on the demand for labor, hence on the changing state of business, on the vagaries of unbridled competition. The proletariat, or the class of proletarians, is, in a word, the working class of the 19th century. Yeah, so this is the issue, is that unless you actually have any money, you can't be a capitalist. All you can do is sell your time. But capitalism requires capital. And if you're not a capitalist with capital, then, well, you're selling your life, because that's all you have left. And that's not, when you put it that way, I know it's biased. It doesn't sound that good. So, yeah. Capar says, specifically industrial working folk who own no property as opposed to peasants or small business owners. Yeah. So that's part of the thing. All you do is, like, you are not working for yourself and you're not trying to run your own little business. Yeah. Bwahaha. Unreal says, I do think that proletariat versus bourgeoisie is a distinction for industrial capitalism. We need to refashion that a bit in the era of financialized neoliberalism. Now, basically, everybody who is in the really upper tiers is the precariat. Yes. So that's fair. Like, there is a vast difference between the very, very, very wealthy and everybody else. But then, of course, most of the world is very poor, even compared to like the whatever little bit of middle class that there is. So it's like, yeah. Douglas says serfdom was in the very recent past when Marx was writing. Yeah, that's true. So they remember this different lifestyle that people had not too far in the past, and now it's getting different where you're just working yourself to death. Like, yeah. K-Parts, I tend to agree, but it's basically capitalism eating everything small business and making you financialize all your assets and play their game. Yeah. So I have some hobbies, like I do a little bit of leather work, and everyone's like, well, why don't you sell your leather work? I'm like, I don't want to sell everything. I don't want this to be a business. It's like hobby. It's entertaining me. Although I probably will start selling some of the stuff, but it's like, yeah. And Doga says, yeah, I'm currently working to pay your credit cards. Yeah, you have to, like, you want stuff, you have to buy, and then you have to work it off, and then you take out loans, and you have to work out more. It's not great. Yeah. Lumpy says, did not accept laughing. Oh, to be a Quebec nationalist? Yeah. Yep. K-Par says, I don't know if it is entirely different than capitalism, but is unique enough for new strategies and possibilities for a movement. Yeah, well, as the lingo of the current world goes, we're on late stage capitalism, where, as was said, capitalism is looking like it's eating up everything, and it's making capitalism look less and less appetizing because there just isn't any space for anything other than capitalism at this point, and that makes it kind of messy. So it does feel like we're getting into a very tail eating sort of sense where it's just everything's on a feedback loop. Okay. So proletarians then have not always existed. No. There have always been poor working classes, and the working classes have mostly been poor, but there have not always been workers and poor people living under conditions as they are today. In other words, there have not always been proletarians any more than there has always been free, unbridled competitions. Yeah, I think chat's covering this. It's like, yeah, there are just people who are working in factories all of a sudden, and that's a new class of person. Got the slang and lingo spot on? Okay. Oh, I think Latvian fooled Lumpy. All right. The proletariat how did the proletariat originate? The proletariat originated in the Industrial Revolution, which took place in England the last half of the 18th century, and which has since been repeated in all civilized countries of the world. This Industrial Revolution was precipitated by the discovery of the steam engine, various spinning machines, the mechanical loom, and a whole series of other mechanical devices. Yeah, the mechanical loom is, this is, of course, of Luddite fame. So we've talked about this before, I think, but like the Luddites, and I know Shane has done a stream on the Luddites, they were revolutionaries who were anti sort of like technology, because a whole lot of people used to be in the textile industry. Then all of a sudden, when you had like machines that just would make clothes, all those people lost their jobs, and it's kind of like we are at same sort of situation now. A whole lot of people were doing like not very high level programming, just like easy, like not easy, but entry level programming, and now it's getting eaten up by the chat GPTs and large language models of the world, and all of those people are getting laid off. So we've got a huge amount of people that can't get jobs that were in a technical field, and now it's like, well, what do they do? Yeah. K-Par says, I used to think Luddite was related to the etymology of ludic, but it turns out there was a James Ludd. Yeah, the chance of the James Ludd actually being a actual person is suspect, but like it was at least a hypothetical James Ludd. So yeah. These are just early, tech machines, and now we've got computers that are doing the exact same thing in the new century. These machines, which were very expensive and hence could only be bought by big capitalists, just like the giant tech giants now who have artificial intelligence, altered the whole mode of production of displaced the former workers, because the machines turned out cheaper and better commodities than the workers could produce with their inefficient spinning wheels and hand looms. The machines delivered industry wholly into the hands of the big capitalists and rendered entirely worthless the meager property of the workers, tools, looms, etc. The result was that the capitalists soon had everything in their hands and nothing remained to the workers. This marked the introduction of the factory system into the textile industry. Yeah, and now we're getting the same thing with the AI, the big AI models in a bunch of other industries like coding and whatever. And, it's going to be in medicine too. You're not going to have like doctors evaluating your scans. You're going to feed it into a specialized AI that, looks at medical scans and just outputs a response about what the treatment model is going to be. So it's going to come for like, tech analysis, and you're only going to have so it's going to be a lot of jobs soon enough. I believe my old stream buddy Kairos, SPSH Kairos, who works on Tetris and Minesweeper bots and stuff like that. That's what he was in that industry years ago. This is before pre-pandemic. He was actually analyzing images to make a model to from medical imagery to like analyze disease, like what diseases do certain people have. And so he knew a whole lot about this, but now it's getting, just getting ramped up from there. Okay. Once the impulse to the introduction of machinery and the factory system had been given, the system spread quickly to all other branches of industry, especially cloth and book printing, pottery, and metal industries. Yeah. Labor was more and more divided among the individual workers, so that the worker who previously had done a complete piece of work now only did that piece. And this is always a good point. This is that like when you used to be able to make like clothes for yourself, but now you only know how to make a part of it, and you lose the knowledge of making a complete piece. Yeah. Lumpy says, we found a way to exploit each other on a grand industrial, pun intended, scale, but now we're moving in a world where we don't need that many humans to sustain humans, unemployable by no fault of their own. Yeah. Yeah, no more artisanal production. Exactly, K-Bars. So the division of labor makes it so there's no more like whole things that people make. You only know how to make a part, and then you can't make it for yourself anymore. So it takes away your ability to make your own stuff. This division of labor made it possible to produce things faster and cheaper, reduced the activity of the individual worker to a simple, endlessly repeated mechanical motions, which could be performed not only as well, but much better by a machine. In this way, all the industries fell one after the other under the dominance of steam machinery, the factory system, just as spinning and weaving had already done. Yeah, now you can just add another stack of industries that are going away. Yeah. K-Parties is because of a quirk oddity of brand marketing becomes not because. All right, I don't know what that was about, but yeah. Okay, but at the same time, they also fell into the hands of big capitalists, and their workers were deprived of whatever independence remained to them. Gradually, not only genuine manufacture but also handicrafts came within the province of the factory systems, as big capitalists increasingly displaced the small master craftsmen by setting up huge workshops which saved many expenses and permitted an elaborate division of labor. Yeah, so this is dividing people. You get alienated from actually being able to do stuff. This is how it has come about in civilized countries. At the present time, nearly all kinds of labor are performed in factories, and in nearly all branches of work, handicrafts and manufacture have been superseded. This process has, to an ever greater degree, ruined the old middle class, especially the small handicraftsmen. It has entirely transformed the condition of the workers, and two new classes have been created, which are gradually swallowing up the others. Like real handmade hiking boots or something. It's like branding and takes multiple inputs that are bought anyways. Yes. Okay. Latvian says, make more in the same time. Don't make the same amount in less time. Yep. Yeah. One. So these are two new classes. One, the class of big capitalists who, in all civilized countries, are already in almost exclusive possession of all the means of subsistence and of the instruments, machines, factories, and materials necessary for the production of means of subsistence. This is the bourgeois class, or the bourgeoisie. 2. The class of wholly propertyless who are obliged to sell their labor to the bourgeoisie in order to get, in exchange, the means of subsistence for their support. This is called the class of proletarians, or the proletariat. Yeah, so we've got the tech giants who control the technology, and then all the workers underneath them, because we workers, all we can do, because we don't have access to making the large language models, we don't have access to these multi-billion-dollar factories. Well, we can't make them. We have access. We have to go work in them. But like, that's what's happening. It's like, this is not a great situation for the worker, or anyone that's not one of these super wealthy people. Yes. So the capture of behavioral data for advertising makes us work for them in our leisure. It's kind of wild. Yeah. So that's part of it, is that they have found that, by influencing what we do online, they call this nudges. Then they can also track that and capture our behaviors. So that's part of it, that even our, free time is commoditized and capitalized on. But of course, like, that's why we have to have ads on Twitch. That's how you pay the bills. Viper says, proletariat is what I say to initiate my magical girl transformation. That's awesome. Good to know, Vipers. Latvian says, imagine being the chump who got to code the webpage for chat. Got only ChatGPT to make their HTML code. Yeah, ChatGPT only got for ChatGPT to make the HTML coding job obsolete. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it is. You end up training your replacement quite often. Even, like, this has happened a million times in different ways. So there's, like, the people who are, the weavers, and their knowledge got taken to make the mechanical loom, and then they lost their jobs. Then, like, people they hire in, like in the US, you outsource stuff, and a lot of times people who are working good jobs here had to train their foreign counterparts. The foreign counterparts are getting paid a lot less than the people here in the US are, and I'm not begrudging the people in a foreign country who get a better job, but you're still getting paid less than the US citizen. And so it's like, yeah, you have to go train someone that you're losing your job to, and now we're just getting all of our work and labor stolen by the LLMs of the world, or the giant tech companies. So, and I've said this before, but I have a website where I just, post stuff, and I run a philosophy calendar, and the ChatGPT bots took down my WordPress site because it was getting hammered. The system I was using to run the calendar software was not, well, there's other reasons, but the version I was using could not maintain the constant barrage of bots I was getting. Even after I blocked them, they would come back. Like, I use robot.txt, and so it's like my labor is getting trained to, like, talk about philosophy for something I did not want, and it took down my site. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? It's failing every few days, and it's like, it's been crazy. I've had to, like, completely revamp stuff because of this. And I don't like that, but, like, yeah, it's things that drive me nuts. Yep, I was DDoSed by GPT scrapers. It's exactly what happened to me, K-Pars. And I'm still pissed about it, and this is what I was saying. I was going to go rewrite the software to, like, do what I wanted to, and I was gonna pay someone to do it, but I was like, yeah, fuck it, I could go use the the AI assist for the coding to get me far enough along that I should be able to put it together myself. Exactly, Bowser. Like I am a little bit annoyed about this still. Like I've been running this fucking website for years, and it started going down because of this. And then there was other problems. I had they decide the calendar software I was using was a free WordPress plugin, and they decided they wanted to get paid. They wanted to get paid in the level of call us to find out what the pricing is. I mean, and I found online they wanted like $150 a month or something. Not something I'm willing to put up with because I can't afford to. It was a free philosophy events website here in New York. Like I'm not paying 100, even $90 a month. Yeah, it was not good. What's up, getting stabbed? Wow, have not seen you in a bit. I hope you're well. Yeah, friend from over at Aris's stream. What's up, getting stabbed? I hope you're doing all right. But yeah, you're okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm getting by. I'm glad to hear you're okay. It's just been a while. There's a few people like from way back when I used to have a viewer, Bewitched Frog. I wonder where Bewitched Frog is. Maybe Cinesemiotics remembers Bewitched Frog if you're still listening to Cinesemiotics. But like, I think you were around at the same time. But Bewitched Frog, I was a early viewer of my stream, and I was just like, and they were cool. But I was like, yeah, I hope they're well. But I was like, yeah, it's good to see you getting stabbed. Okay, so bots, Sir Adam, like, and like, the problem is like, the big tech companies aren't respecting intellectual property rights. They even said they're not doing it, and they're like, oh, we have to keep up. It's like, you know what? Fuck you. I don't care. Like you're. Like this isn't national. Like they're framing it like it's a national defense. But like that doesn't make me feel any better about it. So it's like, yeah, no. It's like if it was for national defense, then fuck it. The large language models should be nationalized, and I should be getting a cut of that stuff. Since private industry is making money off this, then you don't get to use my fucking website for your training. So yeah. Juicer of the workforce for labor, exactly, getting stabbed. Yeah. So my website kept getting taken down. My WordPress, what's it called? The database kept failing because it couldn't handle the software I was running under the weight of all the chat GPT bots and the LLM bots. K-Par says the goal is clearly to make the policing of property rights more stringent and surveilled, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what's going on here. That's the strategy, is that they were really just asking for better oversight and the government to actually enforce copyright. That's exactly what the big tech companies they're doing. Yeah. All right. So under what conditions does this sale of the labor of the proletarians to the bourgeoisie take place? Labor is a commodity like any other, and its price is therefore determined by exactly the same laws that apply to other commodities. In a regime of big industry or free competition, as we shall see, the two come to the same thing. The price of a commodity is, on average, always equal to the cost of production. Hence, the price of labor is also equal to the cost of production of labor. But the cost of production of labor consists of precisely the quantity of means of subsistence necessary to enable the worker to continue working and to prevent working class from dying out. The worker will therefore get no more for his labor than is necessary for this purpose. The price of labor, or the wage, will, in other words, be the lowest, the minimum required for the maintenance of life. Yeah, and this is like the cost is always going to be driven down because like you'll find someone that's a little bit more desperate that's willing to do the same job for you. And this is what, like I was saying about the outsourcing. You can go to a place where things are cheaper in the world and just cheaper in general, and you can find smart people over there. And if you can pay them to do the same work that was getting done here in the USA, you will then, save money because you're paying your workers less. So yeah. When I physically ingest Jeff Bezos like a succulent meal, yeah, I mean, it's believe me, it's not lost on me or basically any other streamer that we are working for the benefit of Amazon at the moment. Like, all of our labor is for the benefit of Amazon. They get half of all the sub prices here. They take a cut of all the bits donated. That is basically the website's purpose, is to keep you on it longer, to show you more ads, or to extract more value from the audience and the viewer and the streamer, basically. So you always got to keep that in mind when you're on this website. They're not doing this out of the good of their hearts. Like, no. Okay. However, since business is sometimes better and sometimes worse, it follows that the worker sometimes gets more and sometimes less for his commodities. But again, it is just as the industrials on the average of good times and bad gets no more and no less for his commodities than what they cost. Similarly, on the average, the worker gets no more nor less than his minimum. This economic law of wages operates the more strictly the greater... This economic law of wages operates the more strictly the greater the degree to which big industry has taken possession of all branches of production. Yeah. So, and that's what's happening now with, models like governing all aspects of your life. They can put like computer efficiency models watching everything you do. And that means your whole life is now being sort of monitored for efficiencies or inefficiencies as they see it to, monetize. So it's like, yeah. What working classes were there before the Industrial Revolution? Taylorism of sorts. I don't know what Taylorism is. Okay, Pars, feel free to enlighten me. The working classes have always, according to the different stages of development of society, lived in different circumstances and had different relations to the owning and ruling classes. In antiquity, the workers were the slaves of the owners, just as they still are in many backward countries, and even in the southern part of the U.S. Yeah, so this is from what? This is from 1847, so this is before the Civil War here in the U.S. Where were we? Yeah. Taylor was an industrial psychologist who found out that people work harder when they're being watched, basically. Aha, yeah. So, yeah, that's part of the issue. And when there's a constant hiss in the speakers. Yeah, so you're driving everyone crazy, and so they're trying to get out of there, and they work harder. Yep. To make people stand for efficiency up. So, yeah, this is the modern madness where you end up having to pee in a bottle because they're like the time between you walking to the bathroom and back is tracked. So it's like, yeah, this is the madness. I guess you could just say the dehumanization of the whole thing, where you become a part of a mechanical device that is, or the technological, you're becoming part of the technology, and you are no longer a person anymore. And so this actually leans into some of the philosophy of technology analysis, and you get like Heideggerian stuff on this. Okay. In the Middle Ages, there were serfs and the landowning nobility, as there still are in Hungary, Poland, and Russia. In the Middle Ages, and indeed right up until the Industrial Revolution, there were also journeymen in the cities who worked in the service of petty bourgeois masters. Gradually, as manufacture developed, these journeymen became manufacturing workers who were even then employed by larger capitalists. Latvian says, my radicalization was so fucking blunt. Lamau listened to lectures on Marx while working at a place that tracked how long it took me to go piss. Yeah. Exactly. So you start to realize what's happening when you get all these like weird shit that you have to all of a sudden adapt to, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? You might look into that if you have like half a brain on you, and you start to realize this is weird and like what is going on, and then you start to realize there's a method to the madness. They know what they're doing. People aren't stupid, and they're trying to control folks. Unreal says Taylorism is a system of practical philosophy noted for its categorical imperative to shake it off. Yeah, just shake it off. It's fine. In what way do proletarians differ from slaves? The slave is sold once and for all. The proletarian must sell himself daily and hourly. The individual slave, property of one master, is assured an existence, however miserable it may be, because of the master's interest. The individual proletarian, property as it were of the entire bourgeois class, which buys his labor only when someone has need for it, has no secure existence. This existence is assured only to the class as a whole. Yeah, so this is, I think, Foucault, who makes the point that certain people are allowed to die. And so if you're a proletariat here, you're only employable, you're only allowed to live as long as you are doing something useful for the capitalist class. And after that, you don't count anymore. You no longer exist, you are allowed to die. And Foucault, I think, applies this more widely, but like this is, I think, the start of it. Yeah. The slave is outside competition. The proletarian is in it and experiences all its vagaries. Yeah, so the slave has to, in some sense, I mean, they could, of course, be killed and just left to die, but like they're still a commodity in themselves. The working class just has to disappear when they're not working. Yeah, the slave counts as a thing, not as a member of society. Thus, the slave can have a better existence than the proletarian, while the proletarian belongs to a higher stage of social development, himself stands on a higher social level than the slave. The slave frees himself when, of all the relations of private property, he abolishes the only relation of slavery and thereby becomes a proletarian. The proletarian can free himself only by abolishing private property in general. Okay, so now we're getting to like this non-historical analysis. Can only free themselves by abolishing private property in general. So I don't know if this actually follows, but this is definitely where like this sort of historical materialism comes in, because like what's the matter here? What is going on? Private property is the matter and how it like gets organized. But this is like, it feels like the first real big claim here. How can the proletarian free themselves from their working situation? Well, if private property is abolished. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe we have socialism now, more private property goes around for everyone, and then like you don't actually have to. Like you can sell your stuff, but then you're no longer private. You may also have private property, but then you can do other things. I don't know. But like, yeah, this seems like a big claim right here. Okay. In what ways do proletarians differ from serfs? The serf possesses and uses an instrument of production, a piece of land, in exchange for which he gives up a part of his product or part of the service of his labor. The proletarian works with the instruments of production of another for the account of this other in exchange for part of the product. The serf gives up, the proletarian receives. The serf has an assured existence, the proletarian has not. The serf is outside competition, the proletarian is in it. The serf liberates himself in one of three ways. Either he runs away to the city and therefore becomes a handicraftsman, or instead of products and services, he gives money to his lord and thereby becomes a free tenant, or he overthrows his feudal lord and himself becomes a property owner. In short, by one route or another, he gets into the owning class and enters into competition. The proletarian liberates himself by abolishing competition, private property, and all class differences. Yeah. So again, this is a massive claim. This is just a bald statement after this discussion of serfdoms and after the discussion of slavery. So, like, again, these are, in some sense, unjustified claims here, but it is also just set up, in some sense, to make the distinction how the situation is different nowadays compared to in the past. In what ways do proletarians differ from handicraftsmen? In contrast to the proletarian, the so-called handicraftsmen, as they exist almost everywhere in the past 18th century and still exist here and there at present, is a proletarian at most temporarily. Their goal is to acquire capital himself, wherewith to exploit other workers. He can often achieve this goal where guilds still exist or where freedom from guild restrictions has not yet led to the introduction of factory-style methods into the crafts, nor yet to fierce competition. But as soon as the factory system has been introduced into the crafts and competition flourishes fully, this perspective dwindles away and the handicraftsman becomes more and more a proletarian. The handicraftsman therefore frees himself by becoming either bourgeois or entering the middle class more in general, or becoming a proletarian because of competition, as is now more often the case, in which he can free himself by joining the proletarian movement, that is the more or less communist movement. Yeah, so I mean, if you're making stuff, either you're a very small scale capitalist or you are getting yourself into competition with everyone else and selling your labor, basically, once you join like a guild or something, and then you have to like, conform to those rules, you're basically in a pseudo factory. Makes sense in some way. Okay. But like, again, so as soon as you get yourself into this pseudo factory-ish state, you become a proletarian, and then you have to do, again, something else to get out of the situation, which we are still in, because like I work for a living. I have some money, but like I am still subject. I don't have enough to like, just not do anything, which I would love to do. Kapar says that's also a narrow historical meaning of private property, less like general possessions, more like the ownership of productive assets, land, factories. Fair. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, like, I have private property, but, like, yeah, I have, like, capitalist level private property? No. I can't go, like, buy a factory at this point and, like, just live off the, what things it makes and, like, my workers' hard labor. Okay. In what way do proletarians differ from manufacturing workers? The manufacturing worker of the 16th to 18th century still had, with but few exception, an instrument of production in his own possession. His loom, the factory, the family spinning wheel, a little plot of land which he cultivated in his spare time. The proletarian has none of these things. The manufacturing worker almost always lives in the countryside and in a more or less patriarchal relation to his landlord or employer. The proletarian lives, for the most part, in the city, and his relation to his employer is purely a cash relation. The manufacturing worker is torn out of his patriarchal relation by big industry, loses whatever property he still has, and in this way becomes a proletarian. Getting steps says you have property that isn't public, and you have public property and private property is how I always think of it. Ah, okay. Yep. Okay, K-Pars continues, and yeah, I think this is more of a pamphlet than a philosophical work that tends to be more in the books like German Ideology or The Holy Family. Yeah, that's fair. This is, like I said, I wasn't planning on reading no book on stream, but I can do, like, a few pages of a pamphlet. So this is more or less, I guess, rhetorically setting up the situation so that people in this situation at the time this was written in like the mid 1800s will start to realize what is going on in society. And so I guess you might say this is kind of more sociological than philosophical here, because it's describing the systems of the way people have organized themselves. And now, of course, there is some philosophy here, but it's more a description of the social structure that has happened with industrialization. So yeah. Getting stabbed continues personal property, private property, and public property. Thus, you aren't sharing your toothbrush under Marxism. It's your personal property, and then that's yours, etc. Yeah. So anthropological, even says Latvian Jesus. Yeah. K-Par says, and agitative as well. Yes. So yeah, this is a. Not only is this describing the situation, it's making the situation look like shit. Which, I mean, fair. Like we were just saying, we're in late stage capitalism now. No one I know is particularly happy with the way the world is. So it's like, yeah. I mean, unless you're uber wealthy, I don't know, and I don't know any uber wealthy people. So it's like, I don't know anyone who's like particularly happy with the way things are at the moment. So yeah. Hey, Yovko's back from the dead. He just had to share an argument against the locationality of sensation. Seems to me the stupidest argument I've ever heard, though. If we met as popular or something, okay. I mean, if you want to share it in chat, go ahead. About like locationality of sensations. We've read arguments to the locationality of sensations on stream, not in a good while, but like we have. Unreal says not going to do any more nonstop live reading on stream of the 3 volumes of Capital. Sad. Yeah, I mean, again, I have a job, and I will tell you, and I've said this many times on stream, if I go over 3 hours by a large mark, depending on what I'm doing, sometimes it's okay, I will seriously fuck myself up. Like, it's not healthy. It's really bad. I will feel it all of tomorrow. I felt it all the next day. Like, I screw up my head by doing what I'm doing here. Like, reading, like, hard philosophy, reading, and, like, processing chat, running stream all at once, and talking, and basically hyperventilating myself. Like, this fucks me up sometimes. Now, that was part of the point during the pandemic, was exhausting myself, but like, this ain't easy. And like, the idea that like this is money oriented too is like it's unsafe in some sense. If I had to do this is like like those people who stream for long periods, and like it's just unhealthy. So it's like, yeah. But like, yep, okay. Yofko, there's pain in my fingers in my mouth, ergo there is pain in my mouth. Yeah, some of this, yeah, so exactly. Some of these arguments are a little nuts. Is it good for the brain, exercise? I mean, it depends what you're trying to do with such arguments. It really does, Yofko. Douglas says, I'm happy with my own life, sad for what's going on broadly. Perhaps I'm just on better medication. Yeah, I mean, you can feel fine in your life. No one, I should be more careful with what I said. I don't know anyone who's very happy with the state of the world at the moment. you can be personally happy. Like, I'm actually not depressed at all. Like, I feel pretty good about myself. Like, I'm happy with, like, you know, a lot of things. I'd like certain things in my life to be better, but, like, I'm not personally unhappy. But do I like the way the United States is going at the moment and in general in the world? No, I do not. Like, I think things are going in the wrong direction. And so I am unhappy about that sort of thing. Yeah. Latvian says, man, I know someone who has a 6 Toronto Maple Leafs season tickets. They've run him 6 figures a year, and he finds things quite shit and getting shittier. Yeah, I mean, you'd think like some people have a lot of stuff, and that would make them happy. It does not work that way. Yeah, that's why I haven't streamed in 3 years. It's exhausting. Yeah, exactly. Getting stabbed. It's been. Yes, I don't know if I've seen you in 3 years. It's like, yeah. Natty said, hey, Natty Science was only a good book choice. Time to vote Zoran. Yeah, Mamdani. I am unfortunately right outside of the city limits, so I am not able to vote in the New York City mayoral election. But, like, yeah, vote Mamdani, or if you don't like him, Lander seems really not bad. Again, Yofko, I do appreciate everyone who is not in my part of the world. I know you are on a distant time zone, and so please get yourself some rest. Treat yourself well. So yeah, good night. Happy Wednesday, Rexler. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that was the point, K-Pars. The argument that they were using is like, oh my god, people are using this argument. Zoran Mamdani is a fellow DSA boy. Yeah, well, I'm like, I say, everyone who would listen to me, vote Mamdani. Like, I'm just going, like, full as progressive as we can get here in New York. But, like, Lander, like, Mamdani cross-endorsed Lander. So, like, and Lander cross-endorsed Mamdani because we have ranked choice voting here in New York. So that means, like, you put all the people you would think is good for mayor on the list. So whatever, Mamdani 1, Lander 2, or whatever, if you want to go the other way around. Either way, that's good. But, like, they cross-endorsed because, like, yeah, it would be, like, Lander is, like, a bit more... They got a bit more experience than Mamdani, but, like, on policy is not too far off. But, like, yeah, go Mamdani if we can. Yeah, well, Unreal Brian, if you go look at the New York City subreddits, it's anyone but Cuomo. Just anyone you want to put on the list, cool, but anyone but Cuomo. The problem is, Cuomo has great name recognition here in New York, and that goes a very long way. People are going to go like, oh yeah, they don't look at politics like everyone else. A lot of people don't look at politics. They're going to go look, they're going to show up that day, they're going to go, and they'll choose what they recognize, and that's Cuomo, which is really depressing. Just chilling, good. I'm doing okay. Yeah. Nice to see, yeah, they cross-endorsed. We had many debate about whether Zoran running is a good thing or not, and nice to see you. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Unreal says, I saw a part of the Detroit mayor debate a couple of nights ago, and all the options were depressingly poor. Yeah, like, it's depressing because Cuomo's still, like, winning here. And it's like, well, we don't really want Cuomo. Like, he would be... Like, the problem is, he would probably be... like, not the worst for New York. It wouldn't be good, but, like, it's definitely... We've just had a bunch of, like, mayors that were not great. Like, no one likes Adams. De Blasio talked a good game, but he wasn't effective at all. He wasn't actually a very good manager. We had, like, Bloomberg before this, and Bloomberg made it into fucking Disney World for all of his rich friends. Like, New York got much worse. Like, New York got through a lot of hard times under Bloomberg. You have to give him credit for that, and he is a competent manager. The problem is, we traded a lot of New York spirit for money, and, you know, like a deal with the devil in some sense, and that's kind of what happened. But, like, I can't hate Bloomberg for doing what Bloomberg was, of course, going to do, but, like, that kept New York sort of alive. But, like, now we've got a zombie New York in some sense, and no one's happy with it. Yeah. So, yeah, Getting Steps says, I would like to beat Cuomo using Giuliani's body. And no one ever liked Giuliani. Everyone hated Giuliani's guts. The only reason that anyone ever liked Giuliani was because of his stupid media stunt on 9/11. And everyone in New York hated him because one of the things Giuliani did, and if anyone doesn't know this because you're not from New York, everyone told Giuliani, do not put your emergency command center downtown, because if anyone's gonna hit New York, it's gonna be over there, so put it in someplace else. And he was like, no, we're gonna put it there. And that's why he got this fucking photo up, because clearly his fucking emergency command center was in the wrong spot. That, like, I mean, the World Trade Center had been bombed in 93 already. You don't put the fucking place that's got a target on it, where you don't put the emergency command center right next to the place that's going to get bombed. And it's like, okay. And he didn't do that. So not only did he endanger New Yorkers and just do it for a photo op, and it's like, and then he just sort of capitalized it, and everyone fucking hated his guts. Everyone hated his guts in New York, and it was just a fucking power, like a political bullshit move when he got into the mayor's office. And it's like, I'm happy that he's fallen so far at the moment, and you don't hear about him, and that he's like a punchline now. Like, that's the best thing that could have happened, but like, it took too long. Sorry, this makes me angry. Think about how Borat got Giuliani just a minor for sex. Exactly. Like, these were scummy people. He always were. Sam, oh, dude. He was just a bad mayor. He wasn't running anything effectively, like I was just describing. He made strategic bad decisions, like putting the command center downtown where, like, because the World Trade Center had been bombed in 93. You don't put the command center on a place that had already been bombed. People already were attacking that site. And, like, so the fact that he did that is just, like, ungodly unsafe, and it's like you're not doing the best decisions for the city, and like that's what the sort of shit he was doing because it looked good on paper and it was terrible. Oh, what's wrong with Cuomo? Well, first of all, Cuomo lied about a lot of the shit that was going on in New York. Now he did make a good show of standing up to Trump, but then if you look on paper what actually happened, he was kind of, half and half a little bit at the time. And so people are pissed at him because basically there's a lot of women that he basically felt up, and no one is very happy about that. But like, again, he didn't like do anything that got him arrested, but it's all these credible people saying, yeah, he was like, way too handsy. It's like, can we at least not have a fucking molester in office at the moment? Like, please. Like, there could be anyone else. And the idea that like he's good at what he's doing, it's not actually true. It's like people know him because the one thing he did that was good was make those like daily broadcasts. But yeah, so he had some good like TV presence. That's not a good fucking governor. It's like, yeah. You're Persian, you hate him? Yeah, it's easy to hate on him. Dugan, the outgoing Detroit mayor, is a bit of a baby. Bloomberg, yeah, okay. A baby Bloomberg, okay, yeah. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Frank? Aloha. Dojo says older people like Giuliani because it takes some cojones to take on organized crime. You want to know what the backstory is on that, Dojo? He sold out to the Russian mob. He took down the Italian mob, but that's because the Russian mob was helping him. So the Russian mob was just taking over the Italian mob business. It wasn't that he actually stopped any mob. He just made a big splash, taking out one mob, basically to help out another. He didn't actually do much of a good job of stopping illegal activity. Like, he just made a good show of it. That's all that happened. Yeah. Yeah, serial sexual harasser for Cuomo. No one, I mean, that is forgiven in the older generation. They're like, oh, everyone did it back then. Yeah, well, fuck you. You're too old, and I don't care anymore. Like, yeah, everyone might have done that generation. Get the fuck out. I don't care. Get some new blood in there. Natty says Cuomo is also standard liberal, who stands for capital, like Engels talks about. Yeah, that's also the thing. It's like he's very, very middle of the road. That's not going to help anyone move forward here in New York. Yeah. What's risky to my life? Oh yeah, taking on the mob. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, you have to. Being mayor is going to be risky in general. But, like, he had protection. That wasn't the problem. Rivers Cuomo, Weezer joke, yeah. Taking on the mob is risky to your life. Again, Russian mob took over. He had Russian mob protection from the Italian mob. It was like, he was just a pawn in a fucking gang war. It's like, yeah, and I don't think that anyone was going to take him on. I don't think anyone was going to take him out. It's a very... Mayor of New York is one of the most visible political positions in the entire U.S. It would be very foolish for anyone to like attack the New York City mayor. That will get like a huge amount of blowback. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like his like this whole thing, if you try to look it up, it's a goddamn mess. And so it's like, I don't even know all the data. This is just like what I've been told by like semi-credible sources. But like, if you try to dig into like New York City politics, massive amounts of corruption like everywhere else. But it's like, don't be holding these people up like they're something great. They're not. Like, most of them are pretty like at best shitty. So it's like, yeah. So yeah. Do I remember the COVID era phenomenon of Cuomo-sexuals? Time to vomit a little bit? Yeah, exactly. Well, he did. That was one of his good moves. Was he got on TV and gave like these speeches every day, so he had a good TV presence. I gotta give him that. But I mean, that's not saying you were good at like actually doing much. But like that's like anyone. There's a nice quote from, who was it? Maybe it was Alan Alda. He said like once he realized that he could get laid if he could give a good speech, then that's what he did. He got up and was able to like speechify well. And he said that like he just wanted to get laid. If you can get up in front of an audience, like in live, there's a good chance like someone out there is going to find you sexy. It's just sort of like a phenomenon of like, people think actors are sexy and things like that. So if you can get up and like command a podium, people think you're hot. And it's like, yeah, it's like, sadly, I don't think that works for Twitch streamers, but if you can get up and like command a podium, like that's all that it is. Like that's an acting job. Good on Cuomo for being a decent, like, presenting as a good politician, but don't like expect me to give him a whole lot of credit for that. So yeah. Yeah. Doge says, I'm only pointing out uninformed views of masses. I'm not saying he's legit, but it was a great bullshit. Yeah, no. He's not, like, that's what he's not bad at. I'm not saying he's bad at bullshit. He's not a bad politician. Like I thought he was an okay politician. That doesn't make it like good for New York to have an okay politician. It's like, yeah, I can get laid if I give good speech. It takes notes. Yeah, Unreal Brian. Like if you can get up and give like a good speech in front of a crowd, you're going to find someone in the audience that thinks you're good looking. Like that's true. Getting laid is like the bar is low. Yeah. Well, if we could have like just a semi-competent fucking mayor in New York that like did something right by the people of New York, it would feel so much like better. Like, cause everyone just seems like they've been dominated by special interests as of late. And like I said, de Blasio talked a good game, but a lot of what he did just couldn't go anywhere because his management was subpar. And then Eric Adams is just kind of like, he has like his constituencies that he works for, and they like him, but it's not good overall. So it's like, a limited subset of New Yorkers are cool with Eric Adams. And like, I'm not hating on them. Like if you like what he's done for you, cool. But like, I think most of the people are just like, nah. Yeah. Hey, Gray.com. Frank, I bet it does work for Twitch streamers above a certain average viewership. Yeah. Like, people make fun of like Twitch streamers saying like, why do they have these fans? Like you're worshiping like people aren't like super sexy. There's hotter people out there. Yeah. So you're going to get some of that. It's just harder, I think. Cause like it's a screen still, like, I get this little fucking box I'm in right here. It's like, it's not going to work. Of course you've got like lots of like, and I'm not to say there are many extremely good looking people on this platform. I'm sure you've seen them before. It's like, hell, I've raided into some of them. But it's like, it's part of the thing. Being in performance, you're going to find, you cast a wide net. There's a chance that someone will like you. Like, it's fine. Okay. Oh, awesome. We read this to your friend last month, your favorite introductory text. Sorry, I missed, read your statements out of order, Gray.com. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can just mention Harris by name. Well, I was leaving it up to everyone's imagination. I had the people I had in mind, but have I ever raided into Harris? Well, I probably have. Yeah, I think I have once or twice. He usually doesn't stream the times I'm streaming, but yeah. But like, yeah, Frank, that's funny. Okay. What were the immediate consequences of the Industrial Revolution and of the division of society into the bourgeois and proletariat? First, the lower and lower prices of industrial products brought about by the machine labor totally destroyed in all countries of the world the old system of manufacturer industry based upon hand labor. Yeah, I mean, can't make stuff compared to a machine. In this way, all semi-barbarian countries, wow, semi-barbarian, haven't heard that in a bit, which had hitherto been more or less strangers to historical development and whose industry had been based on manufacture, were violently forced out of their isolation. They bought the cheaper commodities of the English and allowed their own manufacturing workers to be ruined. Countries who had known no progress for thousands of years, for example India, wow, you're a racist, that's okay, I guess, were thoroughly revolutionized, and even China is now on the way to a revolution. I love you, me some 1847. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is a very historical text. I apologize if this is insulting to you, but I will just read it. I will say that being in philosophy, you have to do a lot of work separating the art from the artist, because guess what? Ain't no fucking people in philosophy, maybe save John Stuart Mill, that would live up to modern standards. So everyone's shitty, usually. So I do apologize. We have come, I don't apologize for philosophy, I apologize if you get insulted, and that sucks. Okay, we have come to the point where a new machine invented in England deprives millions of Chinese workers of their livelihood within a year's time. In this way, big industry has brought all the people of the earth into contact with each other, has merged all local markets into one market, one world market, has spread civilization and progress everywhere, and has thus ensured whatever happens in civilized countries will have repercussions in all other countries. See, this spread civilization, what the fuck does that mean? Is this civilized, what we're living in now? I don't know. Unreal Brian says, currently reading a book from 1840, was taken aback by him referring to people as savages. Yeah, exactly. Woodbridge, an essay on nature. Getting Stabbed says, me with the French existentialists I used to cover. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the idea that I'm communicating to people all over the world in almost real time. This is we're not supposed to be able to do this. It's not just that we have products Engels is talking about here, but ideas and thoughts and stuff like this that we can interact with people on the far side of the world, and it's we can just discuss. This is something so fucking crazy. And it's yeah. So okay. It follows that if the workers in England or France now liberate themselves, this must set off revolution in all other countries, revolutions which sooner or later must accomplish the liberation of their respective working class. Natty says his definition of civilization is that they have transitioned from feudalism to capitalism. That's fair. But I mean, again, this isn't really reading a philosophy text, more a little bit of pamphlet propaganda. So yeah, it's not clear from what he said, but yeah. Latvian says, I do tend to read civilization as synonymous with genocide. Yeah, see, you can read into that as you will here, because it is not defined. Okay, second, wherever big industries displaced manufacture, the bourgeoisie developed in wealth and power to the utmost and made itself the first class of the country. The result was that wherever this happened, the bourgeoisie took political power into its own hands and displaced the hitherto ruling classes, the aristocracy, the guildmasters, and their representative, the absolute monarchy. Yeah, so we're just getting into colonialization via industrialization. The bourgeoisie annihilated the power of the aristocracy, the nobility, by abolishing the entailment of estates, in other words, by making landed property subject to purchase and sale, and by doing away with the special privileges of the nobility. It destroyed the power of the guildmasters by abolishing guilds and handicraft privileges. In their place, it put competition, that is, a state of society in which everyone has the right to enter into any branch of industry, and the only obstacle being a lack of the necessary capital, again, which they control. So it's yeah, oh yeah, there's free competition, except you need what we have and you don't have any of it. The introduction of free competition is thus public declaration that from now on the members of society are unequal only to the extent that their capitals are unequal, that capital is the decisive power, and that therefore the capitalists, the bourgeoisie, have become the first class in society. Free competition is necessary for the establishment of big industry because it is the only condition of society in which big industry can make its way. Having destroyed the social power of the nobility and the guild masters, the bourgeois also destroyed their political power. Having raised itself to the actual position of first class in society, it proclaims itself to be also the dominant political class. It does this through the introduction of the representative system, which rests on the bourgeois equality before the law and the recognition of free competition, and in European countries takes the form of constitutional monarchy. In these constitutional monarchies, only those who possess a certain capital are voters, that is to say, only members of the bourgeoisie. These bourgeois voters choose the deputies, and these bourgeois deputies, by using their rights to refuse to vote taxes, choose a bourgeois government. Yeah, and one of the things AOC did when she got into Congress was she live streamed all the lobbyists that were coming to meet the new Congress members. And so you had this like stream of just like special interests like coming to meet the new Congress members. Like, these are your new coworkers and here's who you're going to be dealing with. And it's just all these industry people with like fancy suits and like ready to like be like, oh yeah, take some donations. And so this is one of those things that like she like live streamed this like her first day and was like, this is madness. Yeah. Yeah. Marx and what? Engels. Well, it only said Engels on this. So, yeah. Okay. Third, everywhere the proletariat develops in step with the bourgeoisie. In proportion as the bourgeoisie grows in wealth, the proletariat grows in numbers. For since the proletarians can be employed only by capital, and since capital extends only through employing labor, it follows that the growth of the proletariat proceeds at precisely the same pace as the growth of capital. Simultaneously, this process draws members of the bourgeoisie and the proletarians together in great cities where industry can be carried on most profitably, and thus throwing great masses in one spot, it gives to the proletarians a consciousness of their own strength. And this is one of the interesting things about the pandemic was people were allowed to spread out via the internet again, and that did weird things I don't think people were expecting. So that was very strange. I mean, it also destroyed some of like the nicer towns, like a little farther out of the city, because all the people from like one of the guys I was talking to at work, he lives a little bit upstate. He says all the people from Brooklyn went upstate, bought up all these houses, and now there's no like housing for the people that actually live and work up there. And there's these people like these basically yuppies, he was calling them, saying that they have these very expensive houses that they can't sell because they're not selling at the same rate as before, but they can't work up there either. So they want to go back to New York City. And it's one of these weird things that happened, that there was like this reverse migration out, and now it's a very weird sort of strange time. Okay, moreover, the further this process advances, the more new labor-saving machines are invented, the greater is the pressure exercised by big industry on wages, which, as we have seen, sink to their minimum and therewith render the condition of the proletariat increasingly unbearable. The growing dissatisfaction of the proletariat thus joins with its rising power to prepare a proletarian social revolution. Yeah, so again, like I was saying, no one I know is particularly happy with the way the world is at the moment, or at least the United States. Maybe other countries are doing better than we are. But like no one I know in the US is particularly happy with the way things are. And I feel like this is just continuing to happen. Everything's very expensive here. It's not just the like industrialization that is talking about here. There are other monetary policy things that matter here in the US, but like, yeah, no one's happy with this. Okay, what were the further consequences of the Industrial Revolution? Big industry created in the steam engine and other machines the means of endlessly expanding industrial production, speeding it up, and cutting costs. With production thus facilitated, the free competition, which is necessarily bound up with big industry, assumed the most extreme forms. A multitude of capitalists invaded industry, and in a short while, more was produced than was needed. As a consequence, finished commodities. Oh, and I was lurking Zach's stream, Zach AP, and he was saying, look, basically where we are now is that the capitalists have nowhere to spend their money. There's like no obvious places where you're going to actually get growth. They've already taken over all the low-hanging fruit, which is one of these weird things. Like, it's like there's talking about like, it's doing all this stuff and taking over, but like you're producing more than is needed. There's nowhere even investment areas in the world. So it's like, yeah. Derivative markets, yeah. I mean, it's like really hard to find where to invest because everything is so analyzed now. So yeah. I mean, if any like super rich person is out there, philosophy is a growth industry. You don't have money in philosophy yet. You should give philosophers money. Selling the future options to sell something, yeah. But like that, I mean, that's like just like speculation, K-Pars, but like, yes. And littering and smoking the reefer. Yeah. Okay, as a consequence, finished commodities could not be sold, and a so-called commercial crisis broke out. Factories had to be closed, their owners went bankrupt, and the workers were without bread. Deepest misery reigned everywhere. Yeah, so if you overdo stuff, what do you get? Deepest misery. And they sold the future too. Half joking, not joking. Yeah, I got you there, K-Part. After a time, the superfluous products were sold, the factories began to operate again, wages rose, and gradually business got better than ever. It was not long before too many commodities were again produced, and new crisis broke out, only to follow the same course as its predecessor. Ever since the beginning of this 19th century, the condition of industry has constantly fluctuated between periods of prosperity and periods of crisis. Nearly every 5 to 7 years, a fresh crisis has intervened, always with the greatest hardship for workers, and always accompanied by general revolutionary stirrings and the direct peril to the whole existing of the order of things. Yeah, and you gotta remember, I'm an elder millennial. I haven't gone more than 7 years in my entire life without a crisis, a war, or something. And like, when I tell this to the older generation, it's like, what world do you think I grew up in? I had wars in the Middle East, financial booms and busts every few years. The idea of any stability for a millennial's life is it doesn't exist. And so there is no sort of oh, do this and you'll get ahead. None of that has ever existed for my generation. And I know it's kind of crazy for even the next generations and whatever, Z Alpha or whatever. So yeah, we'll see. What follows from these periodic commercial crises? First, and I want to also be clear, what happened to my generation isn't the same as what's going on here, because we had tech boom and busts, which weren't just commodities and products, but we had, internet, which is a little bit different. Okay. And internet and now LLMs. Okay, what follows from these periodic commercial crises? First, that though big industry in its early stages created free competition, it has now outgrown free competition. That for big industry, competition and generally the individualistic organization of production have become a fetter which it must and will shatter. That so long as big industry remains on its present footing, it can be maintained only at the cost of general chaos every 7 years, each time threatening the whole of civilization, and not only plunging the proletarians into misery, but also ruining large sections of the bourgeoisie. Hence, either that big industry must itself be given up, which is an absolute impossibility. See, this is interesting that Engels is just no, it's not going to happen. Okay. Or that it makes unavoidably necessary an entirely new organization of society in which production is no longer directed by mutually competing individual industrialists, but rather by the whole society operating according to a definite plan and taking account of needs of all. Again, that we all of a sudden have some sort of whole society thing doesn't follow from this argument. Granted, it remains to be seen what other options are, but yeah, it does present this as the alternative consistently in this document. So yeah. Latvian Jesus says, some thread I saw asked people who lived through crises said they always remember how broken old people were to realize they had to sell something they spent their entire adult life paying for. Yeah. Well, that's what you're getting now with some of the old people who can't retire, and they just look so sad nowadays because they had prepared their whole life to have a break, and now they are not getting the retirement that they thought they were. And I mean, some of them, they weren't you'd be well, they didn't actually put the time and effort in. Well, some of them did, and society didn't hold up its end of its bargain. So it's yeah, it's kind of their future got sold out. Dojo says, one of the things that add to stability in an industrial economy is that the underlying capital costs of land, buildings, machines means that it makes sense to keep labor relatively stable. The U.S. has moved to a more service economy, so if something isn't working, there can be massive layoffs in large corporations, even entire industries. Yeah, and that's part of the issue, is that where the money is being generated in our society today is very different than what it was then, and it, like you said, is more volatile. Service can just be shipped overseas now with the internet, and with LLMs. We're having chatbots. I mean, go check out Globus Stream. But we no longer need to have someone doing local service. One of the interesting things, I had to call my bank. I use Bank of America here in bank here in America. When I call Bank of America on the phone, they have someone in the United States. Usually, I've got people in the Southwest with like Southern accents or the Southwest accents. They're like, "Hi, I'm Tim from New Mexico. How can I help you today?" And it's like, okay, they're working real fucking hard to be like, we're American stuff, because like it's so easy to do. And Bank of America, I'm sure, is screwing us in plenty of other ways. They're not like the big banks or have like a really good name if you look into all the scummy things big banks do. So like they're really working for this service industry thing. But again, in a drop of a hat, those people could be outsourced. Apparently, South Africans have a accent that people like, and so a lot of stuff gets like, outsourced to like South Africa or something. Like if you're trying to get someone not in the US, that like people are like, oh, cool accent. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. Yeah. Doga says, talk to a guy getting a pension from the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, promised benefits, corporate takeover. Man, you don't get what you were expecting. Crazy. Yeah. And so that's part of the issue is that, like my dad took a genetic test and one of those companies went under, and like, how am I as the son of someone who died supposed to go and be like, I don't want you using my dad's genetic data anymore. Like I'm not the executor to his will. My mom is. And it's like this sort of shit, like the corporate protections of like the customers and things like this. It's fucking terrible. I had a buddy who was older guy. He was nearing retirement age, and he was a professional trumpet player. And he was really excellent. He was playing in like Broadway musicals and stuff. Like he was the orchestra for like live music on Broadway, and they had like a union for like the musicians for Broadway, whatever. And the guy running their pension fund stole all the money and ran off, or lost it all, I forget. So all of the money that they had expected to like retire on, poof, gone. It's like, what the fuck? So I was like, yeah, the guy either turned out to be scum or was just grossly incompetent, one or the other, I don't know. But it's like, yeah, you think you're going to be able to like retire. It's like, I don't know. So, okay. So this was the first. And the second consequence of like this whole commercial crisis is that big industry and the limitless expansion of production, which it makes possible, bring with the range of feasibility a social order in which so much is produced that every member of society will be in a position to exercise and develop all his powers and faculties in complete freedom. What does that mean? I mean, I guess you get all the stuff because like there's just so much crap around. You get to do whatever you want. Yeah. Vexler says, I feel like genetic information is so weird because one person can consent, but it can reveal all this information about other people without their consent. Yeah, so like they said, oh, we would delete it if you want to, but like, or like they had all these protections, but then the company went under and it got sold, and the company that buys that stuff does not have to abide by any of the shit that the first company said, because they're just buying like the leftovers and the creditors have to get paid off. And it's like, where's the protections? Our U.S. government sure as fuck isn't like doing consumer protections anymore. So it's like, yeah, it's very strange. Bad. Doty says, wife bought a car. Prepaid 3 years of service. Company was bought out, and we think they aren't going to honor any of it. Yeah. And now, many times when companies buy another company, they do have to abide by certain things, but it depends on consumer regulations where you are and things like that. And, you know, they may not provide the same level of care that you thought you were going to get, all sorts of things. So, yeah. It thus appears that the very quality of big industry which, in our present-day society, produce misery and crises are those which, in a different form of society, will abolish this misery and the catastrophic depressions. We see with the greatest clarity, 1, that all these evils are from now on to be ascribed solely to a social order which no longer corresponds to the requirements of the real situation, and 2, that it is possible through a new social order to do away with these evils altogether. Okay, again, neither of these two things follow from what were said, but rhetorically, they are very effective. It's like, look, we're getting fucked by big industry, and it's based on the structure of industry that this is happening. And I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Now, it's debatable, of course. is like the historical situation as it is being described here, but like it's not insane. I mean, that's why people are drawn to these theories, that this is a plausible account of how things happened with the industrialization and technologicalization of industry and business. Sure. Now, is it possible through a new social order to do away with these evils altogether? No idea. But in theory, like, yeah, you can say whatever you want in theory, but like, yeah, that's what's going on here. All right, it's getting on like almost, yeah, I'm at 2.5 hours of stream, so my brain is going, and I don't know, let's see, well, I'm at 14. How much farther do I have to get to? Yeah, a lot. So I don't know if I'll get to this all. Maybe we can do like half or something. What do I have to get to? I have to get to 25, but like these are longer sections. Well, we'll see. Maybe I can read fast. Above all, it will have to take the control of industry and all the branches of production out of the hands of mutually competing individuals, and instead institute a system in which all these branches of production are operated by society as a whole, that is, for the common account, according to a common plan, and with the participation of all members of society. Yeah, again, so like the idea that it could be for a common account according to a common plan, yeah, you can have a centrally structured government, sure, I understand what that means. And with the participation of all members of society, how the fuck, with 300 million or 400 million people in America, could we ever have this sort of thing? That doesn't even make sense. It will, in other words, abolish competition and replace it with association. Moreover, since the management of industry by individuals necessarily implies private property, and since competition is in reality merely the manner and form in which the control of industry by private property owner expresses itself, it follows that private property cannot be separated from competition and the individual management of industry. Private property must therefore be abolished, and in its place come the common utilization of all instruments of production and the distribution of all products according to a common agreement. In a word, what is called the communal ownership of goods. Yeah, so this is what we were talking about earlier. What are they actually talking about here? It's like, the means of production and like the goods that it produces. So yeah, not just like your toothbrush, but like really the structure of manufacturing. And that's what I was saying earlier. If they are going to use my work, which they have, to train the fucking large language models, well, where's my cut? Where is it? Well, I'm not getting a cut. I put work into that thing. It's like, yeah, nationalize the fucker. I don't care. Okay, in fact, the abolition of private property is doubtless the shortest and most significant way to characterize the revolution in the whole social order, which has been made necessary by the development of industry, and for this reason, it is rightly advanced by the communists as their main demand. Okay, so now we're finally getting into just like the clear, this is what we want, and let's get it. Not my toothbrush, but Rexler's toothbrush is at risk. Yes, of course. Was not the abolition of private property possible at an earlier time? No. Every change in the social order, every revolution in property relations is the necessary consequence of the new creation of new forces of production, which no longer fit the old property relations. Yeah, so it's just saying, look, times change, and you can't do this at all other times. Now, again, this is sort of a historical necessity right here. I don't know what that actually means. Like, this is very Hegelian in my mind. It's like that certain moments in history only can occur at that point. I don't know if that's true, but like this necessary consequence is like, well, what's the strength of that necessarily right here for all you logicians in chat? We need the genetic material off that? Yeah, please. I'd love to get off the toothbrush or off the things to be sold. Okay, private property has not always existed. Now that's true. When, towards the end of the Middle Ages, there arose a new mode of production which could not be carried on under the then existing feudal and guild forms of property, this manufacture, which had outgrown the old property relations, created a new property form, private property. And for manufacture and the earliest stage of development of big industry, private property was the only possible property form. The social order based on it was the only possible social order. Either, okay. So long as it is not possible to produce so much that there is enough for all, with more left over for the expanding for expanding the social capital and extending the force of production. So long as this is not possible, there must always be a ruling class directing the use of society's productive forces and a poor oppressed class. How these classes are constituted depend on the stage of development. Again, making this whole thing necessary. It just says this is the structure and this is what it is. I don't know if this is necessary. Like, show me the metaphysics. And this is not doing the full metaphysics. This is one interpretation of history here. The agrarian Middle Ages give us the baron and the serf. The cities of the later Middle Ages show us the guildmaster and the journeyman and the day laborer. The 17th century has its manufacturing workers. The 19th has big factory owners and proletarians. Yeah, so this is a history. Could it have been otherwise? I don't know. It is clear that up to now, the forces of production have never been developed to the point where enough could be developed for all, and that private property has become a fetter and a barrier in relation to the further development of the forces of production. Yeah, I mean, we have enough food for everyone in the earth now, or all the humans. We still have people starving. It is a problem that we cannot get all the food to all the people. I'd rather have people not starve. Dojo says, during the time of the Luddites, the organized labor was crushed, so they fought fire with literal fire. They weren't anti-technology, they were anti-exploitation. Yeah, I mean, yes, no one is angry at a machine in itself. The machine itself just sits there. They're angry at what the machine's being used for. So the machine became a proxy for their anger, sure. But yes, no one is angry at a hunk of metal. Like, no, they're not angry at a piece of metal. But like, yeah, of course, you actually, if you're going to destroy stuff that matters to the capitalist class, you can also destroy all their fancy machines. And that's, you know, a time-honored tradition of blowing stuff up of like people you don't like. LLMs have an exploitation problem, bringing that up to date. Yeah. So there is a question there. Like, am I angry at the artificial intelligence technology? No. Am I angry at how people are losing their jobs because the LLMs, the corporations no longer need to pay people and they're just like firing people willy-nilly? Yeah, I'm not happy about that. Some people are just mad at the machines. Viper says, yeah, you're probably right. Some people are just angry at the machines. Unreal Brian says, I've been pretty mad at some laser printers, to be honest. Yeah. PC load loader. What the fuck does that mean? So, yeah. If anyone does not know that reference, just Google PC load loader, what the fuck does that mean, and watch the video. And that is a classic video. And if you don't know it, you should go watch the movie that it's from. But, like, you will start to see that everywhere in pop media because it is so iconic. Referenced. Yeah. Yeah. Office Space. Like, I was thinking about that movie today because where I work, there's retail stuff nearby, and people are wearing pins on their outfits. I'm just like, items of flair. How many pieces of flair are you wearing? Like, I just want to say that to some of them, and I'm just like, I literally almost said that to someone this afternoon. How many pieces of flair are you wearing right now? So, like, it's in my head. Like, I'm not kidding. This was like 5 hours ago. How many hours ago? 7 hours ago. Okay. Now, however, the development of big industry has ushered in a new period. Capital and the forces of production have been expanded to an unprecedented extent, and the means are at hand to multiply them without limit in the near future. Moreover, the forces of production have been concentrated in the hands of a few bourgeois, while the great mass of the people are more and more falling into the proletariat, their situation becoming more wretched and intolerable in proportion to the increase of wealth of the bourgeoisie. And finally, these mighty and easily extended forces of production have so far outgrown private property and the bourgeoisie that they threaten at any moment to unleash the most violent disturbances of social order. Now, under these conditions, the abolition of private property has become not only possible, but absolutely necessary. Okay. Will the peaceful abolition of private property be possible? No. Doge says, we will start with you talking about a year of wasted time trying to transition to a new accounting system. I think we've been on this theme the whole stream. That's entirely thing. Yeah. I mean, it's just so mind-blowing to me, like, the amount of wasted time and effort we put into trying to fix some stupid shit that they're just like, yeah, it didn't work. We're sorry. But, like, we are, like, where I work, I am the lowest department, and then my department, I'm the lowest department in that department on the like totem pole, and we're just like fucked sometimes. Okay, it would be desirable if this could happen, and the communists would certainly be the last to oppose it. Yeah, we'd like it to not be violent, but whatever. Communists know only too well that all the conspiracies are not only useless, but even harmful. They know all too well that revolutions are not made intentionally and arbitrarily, but that everywhere and always they have been the necessary consequence of conditions which were wholly independent of the will and direction of the individual parties and entire classes. But they also see that the development of the proletariat in nearly all civilized countries has been violently suppressed, and that in this way the opponents of communism have been working towards a revolution with all their strength. If the oppressed proletariat is finally driven to revolution, then we communists will defend the interests of the proletarians with deeds as we now defend them with words. Will it be possible for private property to be abolished at one stroke? No more than existing forces of production can be at one stroke be multiplied to the extent necessary for the creation of a communal society. In all probability, the proletarian revolution will transform existing society gradually and will be able to abolish private property only when the means of production are available in sufficient quantity. Yeah, so it's like, maybe this will happen in the future, some weird future, who knows? And I am starting to lose it. I can feel it in my head. Okay. Above all, it will establish a democratic constitution, and through this, the direct or indirect dominance of the proletariat. Direct in England, where the proletarians are already a majority of the people. Indirect in France and Germany, where the majority of the people consists not only of proletarians, but also of small peasants and petty bourgeois, who are in the process of falling into the proletariat, who are more and more dependent in all their political interests on the proletariat, and who must therefore soon adapt to the demands of the proletariat. But perhaps this will cost a second struggle, but the outcome can only be the victory of the proletariat. Democracy would be wholly valueless to the proletariat if it were not immediately used as a means for putting through measures directed against private property and ensuring the livelihood of the proletariat. The main measures emerging as the necessary result of existing relations are the following. 1. Limitation of private property through progressive taxation, heavy inheritance taxes, abolition of inheritance through collateral lines, brothers, nephews, etc., forced loans, etc. Yeah, so, I mean, the New York Times did a big expose on how Trump's dad, who was basically a billionaire in like the old money, transferred all of his money to Donald Trump. And then so Trump was like, yo, I got a $1 million loan. It's like, that's not true. You got about what was $1 billion in old money's worth, but they hid it. And then by the time Trump got powerful, no one cared anymore. But it's it was all a lie. But yeah, this is the sort of thing that trying to prevent that. Okay, 2. Gradual expropriation of landowners, industrials, railroad magnates, and ship owners, partly through competition by state industry, partly directly through compensation in the form of bonds. 3. Confiscation of the possessions of all immigrants and rebels against the majority of the people. Yeah, so people leaving, you have to take their money. So there's always something you can't leave the country with all of the money. 4. Organization of labor or employment of proletarians on publicly owned land in factories and workshops, with competition among the workers being abolished and with the factory owners, insofar as they still exist, being obliged to pay the same high wage as those paid by the state. 5. An equal obligation on all members of society to work until such time as private property has been completely abolished. Formation of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. 6. Centralization of money and credit in the hands of the state through a national bank with state capital and the suppression of all private banks and bankers. 7. Increase in the number of national factories, workshops, railroads, ships, bringing new lands into cultivation and improvement of land already under cultivation in all proportion to the growth of the capital and labor force at the disposal of the nation. 8. Education of all children from the moment they can leave their mother's care in national establishments at national cost, education and production together. 9. Construction on public lands of great palaces as communal dwellings for associated groups of citizens engaged in both industry and agriculture and combining in their way of life the advantages of urban and rural conditions while avoiding the one-sidedness and drawbacks of each. 10. Destruction of all unhealthy and jerry-built dwellings in urban districts. You're gonna get rid of all the fucking slums? Okay. 9. Equal inheritance rights for children born in and out of wedlock. Oh, not 9, that's 11, and 12, concentration of all means of transportation in the hands of the nation. It is impossible, of course, to carry out all these measures at once, but one will always bring others in its wake. Once the first radical attack on private property has been launched, the proletariat will find itself forced to go even further, to concentrate increasingly in the hands of the state all capital, all agriculture, all transport, or all trade. All the foregoing measures are directed to this end, and they will become practicable and feasible, capable of producing their centralizing effect to precisely the degree that the proletariat, through its labor, multiplies the country's productive forces. I mean, this is a great thought that, like, all of a sudden everything will work out great once you do this, but again, a little pie in the sky, and there's no mechanism here. But just as once the dominoes start falling, everyone will jump on board. But like, okay, but sure. Finally, when all capital, all production, so I guess maybe to back up that point, you got to remember there's like all this internalized theory in people's heads, whether they know it or not. And, people just are in the mode of like sucking up to the capitalists or sucking up to their bosses, whatever it might be. The idea that people are going to all jump on the bandwagon is a little bit intellectualist. You think everyone's going to start to recognize that's the way to go. That's not how people are. That's not how people think. It's a sort of like, okay, yeah, you think this is how it's obvious, the direction of society. That's not true. And most people are not going to think according to like what this says. Okay, finally, when all capital, all production, all exchange have been brought together in the hands of the nation, private property will disappear of its own accord, money will become superfluous, and production will so expand and man so change that society will be able to slough off whatever its old economic habits may remain. Yeah, and so like this last bit, I mean, just being a theory person in general, people do not slough off their old thoughts. It is ungodly difficult for people to change. Like, I mean, I change a bit, but like, it's really fucking hard. And it's like, usually most people are not willing to put the effort in. And so the idea that society and people in general will just like wake up one day and be like, oh yeah, this is way better if we all just do that. Like, I find that to be grossly unrealistic. 19. Will it be possible for this revolution to take place in one country alone? No. By creating the world market, big industry has already brought all the peoples of the earth, especially the civilized peoples, into such close relation with one another that none is independent of what happens to the others. Further, it has coordinated the social development of the civilized countries to such an extent that, in all of them, bourgeoisie and proletariat have become the decisive classes, and the struggle between them the great struggle of the day. It follows that the communist revolution will not merely be a national phenomenon, but must take place simultaneously in all civilized countries, that is to say, at least England, America, France, and Germany. Yeah. Civilized, right. We're civilized. It will develop, I guess, industrialized maybe, is like as chat was telling me. It will develop in each of these countries more or less rapidly, according as one country or the other has a more developed industry, greater wealth, a more significant mass of productive forces. Hence, it will go slowest and will meet most obstacles in Germany. Guys throwing shade on the Germans, okay. Most rapidly and with the fewest difficulties in England. It will have a powerful impact on the other countries of the world and will radically alter the course of development which they have followed up to now, while greatly stepping up its pace. It is a universal revolution and will accordingly have a universal range. What will be the consequence of the ultimate disappearance of private property? Society will take all forces of production and means of commerce, as well as the exchange and distribution of products, out of the hands of private capitalists and will manage them in accordance with a plan based on the availability of resources and the needs of the whole society. In this way, most important of all, evil consequences which are now associated with the context of big industry will be abolished. I wish this were like this worked. It would work. It would be nice. Yeah, sorry. There will be no more crises. Oh, it is so hopeful. It's like the problem also, I was just realizing, it's so hopeful in the face of like the history of humanity. We have never gone this long without a crisis. And the idea that like, oh, we're just at the end. This is a very sort of apocalyptic thought that we're like, we're just going to transcend now. We're like at the end and it's just going to work. It's like, it's very sort of, yeah, almost religious. Yeah. Chiliastic? I don't know that term, but okay. Yeah. There will be no more crises. The expanded production, which for the present order of society is overproduction and hence a prevailing cause of misery, will then be insufficient and in need of being expanded much further. Instead of generating misery, overproduction will reach beyond the elementary requirements of society to assure the satisfaction of the needs of all. It will create new needs and at the same time, the means of satisfying them. It will become the condition of and the stimulus to new progress, which will no longer throw the whole social order into confusion, as progress has always done in the past. Big industry, freed from the pressure of private property, will undergo such an expansion that what we now see will seem as petty in comparison as manufacture seems when put beside the big industry of our own day. This development of industry will make available to a society a sufficient mass of products to satisfy the needs of everyone. Millenary, basic apocalyptic, like the coming of a new era. Hey, Maddies, yeah, they got me to read Engels. So, yeah, communism, I know. I mean, what are you going to do? I do what chat says. So, someone asked for this, I was like, okay, I'll read it. I mean, it's, yeah, they got me. Well, I mean, I'm maintaining my I'm bad at politics stance, which, to be fair, I'm bad at politics. But, like, you know, and this is not like deep theory. This is more like a little bit of sociology, anthropology, and a little bit of propaganda. So it's like we're going over this, but it's light. But yeah, well, you know, I have... Maddie, this is stream. I do what chat wants. I have to. Was this capitalism, free market, neoliberalism? Yeah. So, I know. Wait, we all just work for Jeff Bezos here. So, that's how it's going. I hope you're having a good day. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm trying to get through this. I'm almost to the end. It's a little bit longer than I was hoping, but like, you know, I'm close enough that I'm going to try to push through. So yeah, but I've been criticizing it a bit. It's very hopeful, and you know, it has some points to it. Like, it has a view of history that I think is, you know, one-sided, but like you know, the analysis is not terrible. Was it worth it? Well, we'll find out at the end. We get to rate, but like it's good for my edification. I'll put it that way. Like, I've not read a whole lot of politics. I've never read this before, so it's good to see what all you communists are on about. So yeah. Yeah, like I was thinking about like a theory, like weird problems in theory of reference, like this afternoon. Like, that's what I was thinking about. Like, that's what I like spend my time worrying about. I'm worried about stupid shit. Latvian says, not gonna lie, I forgot this was Engels and not Marx, and was trying to passive-aggressively point out something Marx wrote that literally talks about communism, but there's also the literal manifesto of the Communist Party. Freddie here co-authored with Carl. Yeah. So this is Engels, yes. Okay. The same will be true of agriculture, which also suffers from the pressure of private property and is held back by the division of privately owned land into small parcels. Here, existing improvements in scientific procedures will be put into practice with a resulting leap forward, which will assure to society all the products it needs. Yeah, well, that's part of the issue now. We have enough food for all the humans, and we're still starving people because we do not find it efficient or whatever it is to actually feed people food. Oh, Carl is a communist. Like, he didn't just write a book about capital? Oh, okay. Shocking. Carl is a communist. Who knew? Okay. In this way, such an abundance of goods will be able to satisfy the needs of all its members. Yeah, we have a distribution problem, not a supply problem. Yeah, exactly. Like, we have enough food. We do not distribute it so people don't starve. Why is a different question. The division of society into different mutually hostile classes will then become unnecessary. Indeed, it will be not only unnecessary but intolerable in the new social order. The existence of classes originated in the division of labor, and the division of labor, as has been known up to the present, will completely disappear, for mechanical and chemical processes are not enough to bring industrial and agricultural production up to the level we have described. The capacities of men who make use of these processes must undergo a corresponding development. Latvian says, I'd argue we also have a production problem too. Well, yeah, that's sort of the whole pamphlet shtick. I mean, it's fair. Like, if we just were able to produce stuff in the area for those people, now, then it wouldn't be like, delivering the food we have over here to the people over there. So, yeah, like, you can describe this in multiple ways. That's entirely fair. Again, why, when we have the resources to get everyone fed in one way or another, do we not do that? Well, clearly, like I was saying, I like this line, I think it's from Foucault. Some people are allowed to die in the world, and we just decide those are the people that don't get to live. Why is society like that? I don't know, but that's how it is. Doger says, I love the idea that we can spend this much time writing this is how things should be without discussing how the idea might be easily exploited or how the ideas will be realistically implemented. Well, yeah, that's one of the issues. This is more, rah-rah propaganda than, like, academic philosophy, which will, like, go through, like, navel-gazing numbers of objections. But, yeah. Now he says, we have the production and transportation. The biggest problem is political. Yeah, absolutely. We do not have the political or social will to, like, not have people starve. Getting Stabbed says, people believe there are haves and have-nots. I think it's got a lot to do with prosperity gospel influence in the USA, but I digress. No, I think this is what I was, I didn't think exactly about that at the time, but this is part of the, ideas do not get out of people's heads. When you have, like, these concepts in people's heads, you might be able to, like, present them with other structures, but, like, the people have, like, these ideas about how things happen in the world, and they think those people don't have food because there's something wrong with them, God doesn't like them, and so they deserve to die. And so it's like, yeah, that's an idea in their head. Like, they do not have the word of God that says God says those people can die. Like, I don't know any religion that says, oh no, like, well, there's psycho people out there, of course, but, like, yeah, that's exactly it. So there is definitely something on the socialization, the psychology, I can't speak anymore, but, like, that's a thing. So he says, animal farms, some animals are more equal than others, and the less equal die. Yep. Do you know what Animal Farm was based on? Yeah, I mean, you can go on during chat, but, like, yeah, that's exactly what this is kind of Animal Farm was about. Like, was the bastardization of, like, social, like, a social society, communist society. Yeah, losing it. Okay, where were we? Just as the peasants and manufacturing workers of the last century changed their whole way of life and became quite different people when they were drawn to big industry, in the same way, communal control over production by society as a whole and the resulting new development will both require an entirely different kind of human material. People will no longer be, as they are today, subordinated to a single branch of production, bound to it, exploited by it. They will no longer develop one of their faculties at the expense of others. They will no longer know only one branch or one branch of a single branch of production as a whole. Even industry as it is today is finding such people less and less useful. Some mustaches are more equal than other mustaches. That's true. Absolutely. Nietzsche, I don't think each is a Homodor. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, then we got stuffs. Okay. Industry, controlled by society as a whole and operated according to a plan, presupposes well-rounded human beings, their faculties developed in balanced fashion, able to see the system of production in its entirety. Again, this is very intellectualist. I find this strangely intellectualist. Yeah. For Nietzsche, their own, yeah, well, Nietzsche's mustache is still better than mine. It's true. Okay. Yeah, this is like strangely intellectualist. Like, we're gonna have people that understand everything, as Getting Stabbed was saying, the idea that, like, they're just going to, like, latch onto this new idea. That's not how people are. Just isn't. The form of the division of labor, which makes one a peasant, another a cobbler, a third a factory worker, a fourth a stock market operator, has already been undermined by machinery and will completely disappear. Education will enable young people quickly to familiarize themselves with the whole system of production, to pass from one branch of production to another in response to the needs of society or their own inclinations. Yeah, again, like, even now, like, there was, like, just a few years ago, it was like, oh, you don't have a job, learn to code. Now coding, like, entry-level coding, is completely eaten by the LLMs. So it's like, you think you can just jump from one area of society to another. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. Maltor, what's up? People don't understand something even when I repeat it to them 3 times in a row, so that will not work. Yeah, exactly. Things are not so easy to understand. Gang Steps, it certainly doesn't help that the CIA is all like, oh, well, we love hating socialists. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you have to remember, if you see a lot of things saying why socialism is bad or communism is bad, if it was obvious that it was bad, you wouldn't have to see all this shit hating on it. It would just be like, yeah, it's obvious. So the U.S. government has to put a lot of effort into reminding people not to do things that the U.S. government doesn't like. So, yeah. Malcher said, I've hated socialism since I was raised in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, that was like peak Cold War shit. So you were getting the full blast. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, well, I don't really like capitalism at the moment either, so we're looking for something else. Because it's like bad stuff, exactly. Things that propaganda is so fun. I love it. I love it like rainbow capitalism. Yeah, so this is what we get nowadays. And it's so funny, like looking back at all this shit, when you get a little bit older, you're like, wow, that was just like propaganda straight up. We're not even in capitalism now. Yeah, I mean, we're like late stage. I don't know what you want to call it. You guys know better than mercantilism. Interesting. Yeah, I was just calling it late stage capitalistic bullshit. That's all. That's the best I can do. Yeah. Okay, where were we? It will therefore free them from the one-sided character which the present-day division of labor impresses upon every individual. Communist society will in this way make it possible for its members to put their comprehensively developed faculties to full use. Yeah, like, oh, don't worry, you'll be like a total human being as soon as like everything changes. Yeah. But when this happens, classes will necessarily disappear. It follows that society organized on a communist basis is incompatible with the existence of classes on the one hand, and that the very building of such a society provides the means of abolishing class differences on the other. A corollary of this is that the difference between city and country is destined to disappear. The management of agriculture and industry by the same people rather than by 2 different classes of people is, if only for purely material reasons, a necessary condition of communist association. The dispersal of the agricultural population on land alongside the crowding of the industrial population into the great cities is a condition which corresponds to an undeveloped state of both agriculture and industry and can already be felt as an obstacle to further development. You'd say corporate theocracy, Molitor says. People worship at the altar of Walmart. Yeah. Getting Steps says, did we have our crony capitalism phase yet? Well, yeah. Did we ever leave crony capitalism? I don't know. And all hail whoever made the most baskets. Yeah. This is where we are. We're in some messy space. Latvian says, want to talk about a socialization that skews one to anti-communism? Read the first part of your name. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's been a bunch of countries that have tried things and has gone very wrong. Yeah. It's not a phase, Mom. Yeah. Capitalism with your favorite thing, a little flair. Yeah. Okay. The general cooperation of all members of society for the purpose of planned exploitation of the forces of production, the expansion of production to the point where it will satisfy the needs of all, the abolition of a situation in which the needs of some are satisfied at the expense of the needs of others, the complete liquidation of classes and their conflicts, the rounded development of the capacities of all members of society through the elimination of the present division of labor, through industrial education, through engaging in a variety of varying activities, through the participation by all in the enjoyments produced by all, through the combination of city and country. These are the main consequences of the abolition of private property. Yeah, it's a panacea. Everything will be perfect if we do this. Sure. What will the influence of communist society on the family? It will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved and into which society has no occasion to intervene. There have been studies where in capitalist societies women are more oppressed and in communist societies women are happier. Women are happier under communism in a lot of instances, which is an interesting problem. Like, the capitalism reinforces old patriarchal schemes more than the communism does. And so this is something that actually has been studied and I believe is true, that women do fare better. It may not fare great, but they fare better under, like, all else being equal under communism. What's up, Baraday? How you doing? If anyone doesn't know our buddy Baraday is another philosophy streamer. Give Baraday a shout out. Faraday is another PDF streamer like me, is quite often reading philosophical and related texts on stream. He is a one of those flossers that talk about like actual, like meaningful things. He's a continental, but he's actually been doing a PhD on the idea of charisma, what gives people certain properties, like where others follow them, listen to them, organizations, people join it. What's the psychology and philosophy behind that? So yeah, Barry, they got me to read some communism. I don't know politics, so I'm sitting here like I don't know what's the metaphysics here. And it's like, this is Engels, and this is more propaganda and sociology, maybe some anthropology. It's good fun, though. It's like, you get to talk about some fun stuff. So, yeah. So, if you don't know Barraday, go give him a follow. If you like, weird Australian people. That's right. Some sort of weird Australian academic. Things are so good. Roll 20, Nat 20, critical success and charisma. Yeah, I mean, Barraday does have a cool, like, Aussie accent, and he's got a fun stream. So, yeah. You're about to write a chapter on Trump, Musk, and Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah, how dare you? So, we all welcome our automated gay space overlords. We wish. But yeah, so we're almost done with this. I'm starting to lose my mind, though. This is the 3-hour mark of stream. Yeah. So, like I said, women's rights do fare better under communism quite often, more than they do in capitalism. Go look at our Supreme Court and what they do in the U.S. What are we reading? I click off and then I click on. We are reading The Principles of Communism by Frederick Engels. That's what this is. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, let's see. It will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved and in which society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage, the dependence rooted in private property of the women on the man and the children on the parents. And here is the answer to the outcry of the highly moral Philistines against the community of women. Community of women is a condition which belongs entirely to the bourgeois society and which today finds its complete expression in prostitution. But prostitution is based on private property and falls with it. Thus, communist society, instead of introducing community to women, in fact abolishes it. Maddie says that's very dependent on country, the government, and what rights they're given. Yeah, absolutely. Maddie says because those rights can and have been given and denied at different times. Yeah. Holy crap, I didn't know this was the dude himself. Yep. What did Engels just call me? Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Like I said, I read some studies on this a while ago. Again, as pointed out, your mileage may vary depending where you are. What will be the attitude of communism to existing nationalities? The nationalities of the peoples associating themselves in accordance with the principle of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of this association and thereby dissolve themselves, just as the various estate and class distinctions must disappear through the abolition of their basis, private property. Again, this is something I'd just say is like ludicrous. Have you met people? This is not how people are. Like maybe like people just do not give up their history. They fight tooth and nail to be like, I'm from here. This is the kind of person I am. Compelled to mingle. No. See, this is what I mean. Even chat is like, are you crazy? That's never going to happen. What will be the attitude to existing religions? All religions so far have been the expression of historical stages of development of individual peoples or groups of peoples. But communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. Yeah, and so this is one of the reasons why religions hate communism, because they're like, communism replaces all of this shit. You got to get rid of your religion. And have you met people and how they are about their religions? Gang Step says, I'm a Marxist, so I tolerate Engels. Fair. Well, see, I don't even know what the argument is there. Like, I don't know this stuff. How do communists differ from socialists? The so-called socialists are divided into 3 categories. Reactionary socialists. The first category consists of adherents of a feudal and patriarchal society, which has already been destroyed and is still daily being destroyed by big industry and world trade and their creation, bourgeois society. This category concludes from the evils of existing society. The feudal and patriarchal society must be restored because it was free of such evils. In one way or another, all their proposals are directed to this end. This category of reactionary socialists, for all their seeming partisanship and their scalding tears for the misery of the proletariat, is nonetheless energetically opposed to the communists for the following reasons. Getting steps says, I also accept the way sociological things have shaken out, like psychologically. I don't really think it's possible, but I still believe it. Yeah, okay. All right, so the criticism of sociology, these reactionaries, is it strives for something which is entirely impossible. 2, it seeks to establish the rule of the aristocracy, the guild masters, the small producers, and their retinue of absolute or feudal monarchs, officials, soldiers, and priests. A society which was, to be sure, free of the evils of the present day society, but which brought at least as many evils without even offering the oppressed workers the prospect of liberation through a communist revolution. And 3, as soon as the proletariat becomes revolutionary and communist, these reactionary socialists show their true colors by immediately making common cause with the bourgeois against the proletarians. Unreal says, he's a party intellectual devoted to the dictatorship of the proletariat. She's a Chechen nationalist who knows how to handle Kalashnikov. They fight crime. Yeah. I was wondering where that was going. I was like, all right, now we've got like a campy, like a buddy, like rom-com or something. Okay, the bourgeois socialists, so as opposed to the reactionary socialists. The bourgeois socialists. The second category consists of adherents of present-day society who have been frightened for its future by the evils to which it necessarily gives rise. What they want, therefore, is to maintain the society while getting rid of the evils which are an inherent part of it. Yeah, so this is the neoliberals who want to just like, oh yeah, we're going to fix things. Yeah, okay. To this end, some propose mere welfare measures, while others come forward with grandiose systems of reform which, under the pretense of reorganizing society, are in fact intended to preserve foundations and hence the life of the existing society. Communists must unremittingly struggle against these bourgeois socialists because they work for the enemy of communists and protect the society which communists aim to overthrow. Yeah, so this is the one that people are getting very annoyed with now, because it's like this is the people who are just trying to maintain the status quo and sort of mitigate the problems, but like it's not working. So, and the democratic socialists. Hi, Bernie. Finally, the third category consists of the democratic socialists who favor some of the same measures as communists advocate, as described in question 18, not as part of the transition to communism, however, but as measures which they believe will be sufficient to abolish the misery and evils of present-day society. These democratic socialists are either proletarians who are not yet sufficiently clear about the conditions of the liberation of their class, or they are okay, so this is again intellectuals, like they just don't understand. Or they are representatives of the petty bourgeoisie, a class prior to the achievement of democracy and the socialist measures to which it gives rise, has many interests in common with the proletariat. Yeah, so they're saying like, okay, they just want to kind of maintain their like mediocre status. It follows that in moments of action, communists will have to come to an understanding with these democratic socialists and in general follow as far as possible a common policy with them, provided that these socialists do not enter into the service of the ruling bourgeoisie and attack the communists. It is clear that this form of cooperation in action does not exclude the discussion of differences. Dare you say care angles? That's funny. All right, yeah, so this is last section, thank God. And a fly has landed in my water. Great. Oh, you'll allow it. What is the attitude of the communists to the other political parties of our time? It's the gadfly. It's a very small fly. I don't know if this gadflies I think are bigger, but like, yeah, I have no other water and I'm not getting them. So I may end up just fucking drinking because I don't give a fuck. Alright, so what is the attitude of communists to the other political parties of our time? This attitude is different in different countries. Yeah, there are many people out there. In England, France, and Belgium, where the bourgeoisie rules, the communists still have a common interest with the various democratic parties, an interest which is all the greater, more closely the socialistic measures they champion approach the aims of the communists. That is, the more clearly and definitely they represent the interests of the proletariat, and the more they depend on the proletariat for support. In England, for example, the working class Chartists are infinitely closer to the communists than the democratic petty bourgeoisie or the so-called radicals. Drink it, Ruffings. Yeah, exactly. The fly was like, fuck it, care Engels, and unalived himself. Yeah. Cheers. It's all protein. In America, where a democratic constitution has already been established, communists must make the common cause with the party which will turn this constitution against the bourgeoisie and use it in the interests of the proletariat, that is, with the national reformers. Yeah, like, okay. Have you dealt with Americans? Oh, God. In Switzerland, the radicals, though a very mixed party, are the only group with which the communists can cooperate, and among these radicals, the Vaudois and the Genovese are the most advanced. In Germany, finally, the decisive struggle now on the order of the day is that between the bourgeoisie and the absolute monarchy. Still, the communists cannot enter upon the decisive struggle between themselves and the bourgeoisie until the bourgeoisie is in power. See, this is just so psycho. It's like, oh, we have to wait for the other people to get in power to, like, then take over. Like, this is why it's just such a weird theory sometimes. It follows that it is in the interest of the communists to help the bourgeoisie to power as soon as possible in order to soon to be able to overthrow it. Yeah, see, this is just like, okay, you need to, I mean, this isn't even saying that we're getting someone like a proxy that we're just trying to overthrow. It's not like we need to necessarily have these people in power, otherwise the revolution won't work. It's like, this is why it's like so idealistic. It's like you need to have this one sort of like vision of the revolution as opposed to like no other ones. It's kind of nutty. Okay. Against the governments, therefore, the communists must continually support the radical liberal party, taking care to avoid the self-deceptions of the bourgeoisie and not fall for the enticing promises of benefits with which a victory for the bourgeoisie would allegedly bring the proletariat. The sole advantages which the proletariat would derive from a bourgeois victory would consist, 1, in various concessions which would facilitate the unification of the proletariat into a closely knit, battle-worthy, and organized class, and 2, in the certainty that on the very day the absolute monarchies fall, the struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat will start. From that day on, the policy of the communists will be the same as is now in the countries where the bourgeoisie is already in power. In the name and on the mandate of Congress. Yeah, this is, see, Dojo, this is one of these weird things. Like, okay, but anyway, we can, now that I'm done with this long fucking thing, and my voice is starting to go, we rate this. I'll get back to your comment in a second, Dojo. But like, yeah, if you thought this was fun and made your brain dance, you give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do matter. So, brain dance. If you thought this was existential artistic drama, or like this is like social stuff, I fall under existentialism, you can give it a nog scream, like, because this is about how should we be living, and this is about how we should be living. That's an existential question to me. Nog Oro for deeper ancient ideas, if you want to give it an Ouroboros. Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog Navel, navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also give it the global vote yay and the global vote nay of Twitch. Also my vote meh. Everyone can use these are better TTV emotes. You can install a plugin. If you don't see them in chat, you can see them below. And I do make an overall score of this, so anything in the green makes the overall score go up, anything in the red makes it go down, and the meh actually makes it go to the middle. So we get like, yeah, you can spam emotes that matter, and you can like, get sort of averaged out. Barrow says grapes and a meh. Yeah, I can feel the grapes on this because like it makes a bunch of big claims, but like it's so just sort of like optimistic and pie in the sky. Frank, thank you also for the rating. Laughing Jesus gave it a lot of mez, scream and a yay. Frank, grapes and a yay. Laughing Jesus gave it the grapes. But I haven't read Engels before. How disappointing. Yeah, I mean, this is early on shit though, but like, yeah. But again, this reads more like a propaganda piece than it does a straight philosophy piece. And as propaganda, like, I don't think it read poorly. I think it was a little bit more rah-rah. And in that area, I think it did okay. Like maybe I'm not the best person to judge like propaganda work. I've not read a whole lot of it, but like, yeah, it's not great. K-Pars, gave it some yays, scream, grapes, and a navel gaze. Yep. Douglas says, hard not to judge this in a historical context. First time, very interesting. For now, it's a bit meh. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I'm feeling. Socknell says, stuff in French. I hope I'm doing you well. You doing good? Okay. Mora, Travel. But see, I don't know that rest of that sentence there, Sock. Now you're trying to do something about photography, yeah. But I would say would rather read Nietzsche, Lamau. No wonder the right is winning today. Yeah, well, again, Nietzsche, I'm sure, knew about this. This is from 1847, so this is well before Nietzsche, really. And so he would have had this in the past and would have been viewing this already. He would have known about this, I'm sure. It's pretty close to dance, but it didn't go very deep. I mean, yeah, and that's part of the issue. And maybe that's a little bit of the historical thing that Dojo was saying, is that this would have been like some holy shit back in the 1800s. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, we understand. You're a communist. Okay, very good. Head pats. So, yeah. Unreal says, screaming a yay. Yeah, it's not really philosophy, but it lays out the basic viewpoint clearly. Sometimes I've been working on my odd job of photography frames. Yeah, see, I didn't know what that meant, like photography frames for money, but that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. You're doing some get paid. That's good. I mean, gotta eat nowadays. Like, things ain't great. So what am I gonna do? I'm in the I keep fucking doing this. I am losing my mind. So yeah, I'm gonna give it some grapes. I mean, because this is not like proper philosophy in some sense. It's like this is more a description of the position and not an argument. But it's not like, I think he did a good job with, again, laying it out. So I'm feeling more along the lines of like this sort of, yeah, like I'm like here. It's kind of a manifesto. I feel like it's reading propaganda-ish, because what it does is it's setting up the communism as the lone alternative to all the other things that are going on at the time. And so it's like, well, you've got like these industrial things, and you've got like these other sorts of positions that like existed where people were working like in small in guilds, or like they're making stuff at home, and then like it's all getting into like you're all getting forced into proletariat, and that means you should be communist. And so everything is like, you were here and now you got to be communist. Then you could have been like this and now you should be communist. You could be like this and now you should be communist. So I feel like it's more trying to big tent communism. So not really a manifesto outlining communism, but trying to big tent communism, get as many people be like, yeah, communism is the future, sort of thing. Stockton's on support of Marx, but it's not philosophy, it's a political science point. Yeah, this kind of feel like it was. This was published a year before the manifesto. Interesting. Yeah, so this is more of a, drumming up support piece. But yeah, so I kind of feel like it's very mid for philosophy, but it does present the position strongly in what it's trying to do, which is not philosophy. It's doing something else. So yeah, if anyone else wants to get their emotes in, what was I going to say? I was going to respond to something Dojo said. What was that up here? An accelerationist. Yeah. So this is part of the how I feel this sort of like inevitability that things are just going to be a certain way in the future, and I find this grossly idealistic and kind of disgusting when it comes to like contemporary accelerationists, and I find it just sort of naive when it comes to the communists, that they just think is just going to happen because like people resist, people are weird, people go off in all sorts of different directions, and they think, oh yeah, everyone's just going to like agree with the communism once they understand. That's why I was saying a lot of times while reading this, that this is like, it reads very intellectualist, that people will just somehow have the epiphany when this, like the revolution starts happening, that everyone should just jump on. And that's not how people are. And this feels like the same thing. It's very idealistic, like the accelerationists going forward. Be like, they just think, oh yeah, we're going to help all these people in the future, and it should just be clear to people. It's like, that is psychotic, what like people are doing nowadays. Like, you're just finding some future that you think is utopic, but like that's just like your fucking psycho vision, and you're justifying everything you're doing now to get your fantasy to like make your fantasy happen. But there's no one like making you think, like questioning your fantasy. You have not done anything. And like the communist revolution here is kind of a fantasy. It's 1847. Any communist revolution is a fantasy at this point. And so it's like the same sort of thinking that like, oh yeah, everyone's just going to do it. The start about the wage being forced to a subsistence level was really close to being good. If you develop that more, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, people know that now. That's where a lot of economics has gone into it. Of course, you know this. Unreal Bright says, I've argued that Marx and Engels was the first acceleration. See, that's interesting. See, I'm just getting there now. I kind of knew that, but it's coming up right now. King said, now we're all going to die. The planet will beat us to new politics. Well, that's fair too. I mean, we may be forced into something new because of like just climate change. That's not going to be fun. K Par says, I think Deleuze does so explicitly in Anti-Oedipus as well. All right. So, yeah, so this is known. I mean, for stuff like this, like, there's certain areas in philosophy I know better, some I know worse. This is one of the things I know worse. I'm claiming no novelty in anything I claimed here, and if anything, I probably fucked some things up.